Artificial Fear by Orlando Brew. Chapter 0, Finality. Caleb's heart was driving against his chest as if it wanted exit, and he found his breath coming in gasps. He pulled the blaster rifle off his shoulder and tried to use it like a cane to rest against. Habeas, the fire chief, reached to steady him, but he waved the man back. "I'll be fine in a second," Caleb managed to say. And then the pain exploded in his chest, and he collapsed to the shattered remains of the basement floor. He grabbed at his chest with one hand, but the pain was inside him, beyond his grasp. Will and Habeas hovered over him in alarm, but Caleb wasn't listening to what they were saying. His lungs were burning, and he couldn't get enough air into them, as hard as he tried. Caleb kicked his legs out frantically and held the blaster rifle in white fists. The pain in his chest was immense, and if he could just breathe, it might not have been so bad. But he couldn't breathe. He squeezed his fists harder around the weapon till it started to hurt, but the pain was not enough to distract him. He couldn't breathe, and his chest was on fire. Angel was not beside him. Lying there, the pain washing over him and pulling him into a barbed darkness, Caleb could not but think about what had happened. Day before yesterday, he'd still been fighting with his wife, and life had been as it always was on Ranon. The furthest fucking planet from the home system. Uneventful. The terraforming plant did its work, the local prostitutes did their business, and the local cops sat around with nothing to do. Ranon, a planet on the edge of the galaxy, where galaxy police sent their worst officers to finish out their contracts. He might have found how all this ended up rather funny if he hadn't been gasping for his last breath in the destroyed basement of his destroyed police station. Upstairs on the front steps, his girlfriend was wounded and needed help, but he was downstairs dying. He was sure of it. Caleb's hand went numb, and he lost hold of the rifle. He knew he would be lost soon. But his Angel was not here. She would not be the last face he saw, and it angered him more than anything, than even dying. He'd gone through all that shit, and now this is what he was going to get. Caleb just needed some time to figure things out, and then all hell broke loose. If only they'd had more time. If only things had gone by plan. A better plan than his. If only he'd never come to this godforsaken planet. But then he never would have met her. Broken, sprawled out in a knot of numb, twisted meat, asphyxiating as his heart stopped, Caleb knew that all of this centered around one person, an android named Polar. This is Artificial Fear by Orlando Brew. Chapter 1, Tribulation. 3 days earlier. The phone rang just as his wife was about to launch into yet another tirade of insults. It silenced her for just a moment, and as she sucked in air to continue over the sound of the ringing phone, Caleb picked it up and hoped it would continue her silence. Indeed, she became quiet as he thumbed the on switch and spoke. "Caleb here," he said, holding the small rectangular phone to his head. "We got a problem," Joshua said very seriously. "Well, Will's got the station. Why don't you bring it to him?" "We did. He said to call you. You're the commanding officer," Joshua said. "Acting commanding officer. Bayer will be back next week," Caleb corrected him. "Well, that won't do us much good," Joshua replied. Caleb's wife was looking at him angrily, but she was still quiet. He prayed that if he could just keep this conversation going long enough, she might leave the room. "What's this problem, then?" he said, turning away from his wife to look out the window at the rust-colored city landscape outside. "Polar is coming," Joshua said. Caleb heard the words, but he didn't quite register them. He glanced over his shoulder at his wife in the kitchen doorway, with her arms across her chest, lips in a familiar frown. "You mean Polar?" Caleb asked, his mind processing every other definition of the word than the one Joshua most likely meant. "Yes, Polar," Joshua stated. "The one who leveled Sandoza and the Livingston colonies?" Caleb could still remember seeing holocasts of the bodies being carried out from the wreckage of buildings, their limbs turned at impossible angles where they still had them, in an age where everything was repairable as long as the brain was still warm when they reached the hospital. You paid notice to one who could make so many people unrepairable. Yeah, Caleb, that Polar. Will caught a distress signal from Bormare right before he leveled the police station there. They said he was looking for an android with the call sign Brax. No shit. Caleb felt his bottom jaw drop as the words left his mouth. Yep. I already called Ranon headquarters and call, and they said they're going to send us a specialist. Should be here by tomorrow. And Polar? Caleb didn't care about where the specialist was at the moment. He wanted to know where Polar was. From what we've gathered, he'll be here sometime the day after tomorrow. That is, if he doesn't stop to level anything else on the way. I guess we can hope, Joshua said. Okay, I'll be there soon. Soon. Gotcha. Joshua's line went dead, and Caleb looked at the phone for a moment before thumbing the off switch and putting it down on the living room table. He looked up at his wife, but she had finally left the room. Polar, Caleb said to himself. For a minute, he just stood there in the living room, considering the situation. Who would come to Ranon in their right mind just to do away with an android like Brax? Caleb rushed to the bedroom only to find his wife there on the bed crying again. He tried to ignore her as he pulled his off-white trousers out of the laundry container. They weren't stained or anything. It had just been a week or so since they were cleaned. But cleanliness was on the low list now, with things being what they were. She was watching him as he pulled his pants over his underwear and hunted for his uniform shirt, never saying a word as the tears rolled down her cheeks. He hated when she pulled this on him, the fuming observation, backed up by the fake tears she could turn on and off like a faucet. Here at the edge of the galaxy, the police force was pretty lax about uniforms and just about everything else. But he liked to wear the shirt. It was made of a nice heavy material with magnet buttons, short sleeves, and there was a slot for him to clip his badge above the left chest pocket. Caleb liked to wear the badge, if nothing else. It made him feel like an officer. Where is my police shirt? He said, digging through the laundry now. Oh, now you talk to me. When you need something. I see how it is. Find it yourself. She huffed at him and looked the other way, the tears having come to a sharp stop. Caleb straightened and grit his teeth. He kicked the laundry container over and watched the dirty clothes scatter across the bedroom floor. She didn't even look. Amidst the sea of neon panties and white bras that littered the floor was his blue police shirt. Picking it up with his toes, Caleb kicked the shirt up into his hands and pulled it on in a rush. He needed to leave this apartment with haste. Polar may have been coming, but his wife was already here. He snapped the shirt closed and tucked it into his pants, scanning the room for his guns. The twin black pistols were sitting together on the night table, with his badge and wallet, waiting to be collected. Caleb pulled the checkered blue and white sash off of the bedpost and wound it around his waist, tying it off behind him. Making sure the safeties were set on both guns, he tucked them into the sash and stuffed his wallet into his back pocket. The familiar weight of the badge clipped onto his chest, completing his uniform. Where are you going? This is your day off, his wife said, only now seeming to realize what he was doing. They need me down at the station, he told her slowly, as if he were speaking to someone with an attention problem. I need you here. Yes, but if I'm not here, the apartment won't be leveled by a 5-meter walking tank, now will it? Janie, I gotta go. Her eyes were trying to grab him and hold him there, but he left the room feeling a weight on his chest, heavier than his badge. His boots and his tan coat were by the front door. Caleb got as far as the kitchen, then stopped and looked back at his wife through the bedroom doorway. Honey, I have to go. You want to go, Janie called back. Yes, I do, he told her. Why? Her cool green eyes were glistening and spilled over, but it had no effect on Caleb. You were the one that left me for a year, Caleb said. It's not my fault things were fucked when you got back. His wife's tears came on stronger now, and he just shook his head and rubbed his eyes in aggravation. Bye, Caleb said. He yanked his boots on and grabbed his tan coat as he left the apartment. can't believe he's actually coming here, Nastus commented, almost smiling. I mean, I always heard about him, but I never actually thought I would meet him. Man's been in jail since before I was born. Does prove to be an interesting diversion from the usual shit that happens around here, his partner Dane added. Watson looked from one man to the other and chuckled to himself in the sharp observation of humor. I can't believe you two. Polar is coming here to destroy the place, and all you can say is, "It will be an interesting diversion," Watson said. The red daylight was wasting away as it came through the small window of the officer's lounge. Years of dirt had built up around the edge of the window, so that very little space was actually left on the glass to allow healthy light through. Not that there was very much healthy light on Ranon. It was always kind of a mottled red outside during the day, and at night the lighting just shifted to a sickly white blue. No stars, just two imposing suns sharing the sky. Watson had been transferred to Ranon less than a year ago from the SWAT force on Zeta 7, and had become the big gun of the Quadrant 12 City Police. Second big gun, if one counted Brax, but no one really did. "Oh, you're just uptight because you know Caleb's going to send your ass in first," Dane replied with his own chuckle. "Most likely," Watson said to himself. "Probably Max and me, all alone against that monster." "Just the two of you?" Nastus shrugged. "Hey, you never know. Brax may drag his can-ass out of the basement and actually step up to the plate on this one," Nastus said, kicking his feet up on the imitation wood table that was the heart of the officer's lounge. "Either way, you know Max will love it. He's all for violence." Nastus's teeth seemed that much whiter against his dark lips as he grinned. "Like you two aren't." Watson got up from his chair, which creaked with relief from his weight, and brought his mug with him to the coffee machine. The coffee machine was only such a thing in a near manner. It was really a caffeine-boosted sludge machine, creating a mug of coffee comparable to a triple shot of cappuccino and dirt. There was no real cappuccino on Ranon, though, and there wouldn't be, for a long time. Watson would have brought a cappuccino machine had he known this, but then no one had told him Ranon was the ass end of the galaxy. "Watson, we're violent because the situation demands it. We don't like it. We just do it," Dane explained, mimicking Nastus's grin. Watson just poured himself another cup of coffee. 2 was the legal limit for most officers, though androids drank as much as they wanted. Funny, considering that most androids had no need for it. Watson just liked to share the experience with his human companions. He held the mug with his oversized left battle hand as he waited for the liquid to cool down. To call it a hand was like calling a missile a bullet. What Watson had there was a weapon of great destruction. It was part of his battle android armor upgrade he got when he was in SWAT. The hand was about the size of a large baseball glove and had about the same skin consistency to the leather. It was wired up to fire plasma, but the whole process had made it poor for nerve synchronization. He couldn't feel things too well, which made it perfect for holding a steaming hot mug of coffee. Watson took a sip from the mug, and heat sensors went off in the corner of his vision. He sucked in cool air to ease his burned tongue. "I wonder if we'll be getting weaponry upgrades because of this," Nastus inquired, arcing his left brow. "I highly doubt that, Nastus. We don't seem to get anything here," Watson replied. "We should be getting some rain soon," Dane pointed at the small window for effect. "Any day now. Charlotte should be coming through here." Nastus looked at his watch and nodded. "Actually, storm should have passed by now. These terraformers are getting sloppy, I tell you." Nastus's voice deepened with the close of the sentence. Ranon was like a budding garden in many ways, and like any garden it needed to be watered regularly. The terraformers on Ranon were using an artificial storm front made up of 6 massive storms that were driven around the planet by powerful wind engines to keep the planet moist. Charlotte was one of them. The storms followed a normal flight pattern, and at one point could have been timed to the minute, now no longer. The theory was that the less predictable the storms got, the more a part of natural planet ecology they became. Our luck. It will get here right alongside Polar, Watson said to himself. He left the officers' lounge to the sound of his fellow officers fantasizing about refreshing gunfights in the rain with big guns. Watson wanted nothing of it and proceeded down the windowless hallway to the stairs. The Quadrant 12 City Police Station was a testimony of dilapidation. It was a 4-floor steel and concrete building 20 minutes from the heart of the city, a good distance across the conurbation from the terraforming station that was maintaining the work across Quadrant 12. Ranon was at the final stages of terraformation, which meant it had an atmosphere and some wildlife, but not much of a social life. There were 60 cities across the entire planet, and they were all, by Watson's standards, complete pieces of shit. Watson had ended up here by way of several heated discussions with his commanding officers and a pleasant run-in with the daughter of a certain anti-android politician. Nothing notable had ever happened on Ranon. Till now. Watson pounded down the stairs and kicked the basement door open to cast light across the vast and cluttered main room. "Hey, Brax!" Watson called as he slipped in before the door closed and took another tentative sip of his coffee. "Over here," a deep metallic voice answered from the other side of a wall of file servers. The basement doubled as a repair station for androids, as well as a storage room for the rest of the building. Brax hadn't left it in more than a month. Watson came around the wall and raised his right hand, greeting to the 3-meter battle androids sitting on a steel drum. Unlike Watson, who had a human appearance despite the abnormally large armored appendage, Brax was an abnormally large armored man. "How you doing?" Watson queried. "I suppose you heard, then." The voice issued from the face of the battle android's head. A pair of large red eyes and a matte gray shield of metal made up Brax's immediate face. There were exhaust ports on the sides of the shield plate that looked like spikes, which matched the top of his head that was finned with sharp steel, as was the sides of his head. Polished, thick antennae extended out nearly 1/3 of a meter from the side of his head, each coming to a needle point. Just above the red eyes was a star, its center slightly jutted out and sharpened. It seemed like a helmet, really, larger than any normal head, but then Brax was larger than most. The surface of his neck was made up by a matte gray material that might have been some sort of soft metal or carbon fiber. Beyond that, he was covered completely in grafted armor plates that had been fitted to move fluidly in combat. Brax might almost have looked like a massive knight from some fantasy holocast if he had not handled himself in such a feeble manner. "I heard. You know Max and me are going to try and take care of this," Watson assured him. The massive head turned to face Watson, and the red eyes flared with a bit of deeper color. "I know what you're thinking," Watson said. "I don't think we'll do much of a damn either." Brax pulled a large wire out of the jack port located just behind the left antennae and set it down on the desk behind him. Apparently he'd been logged into the building's mainframe, but Watson had his full attention now. "Polar has destroyed everyone that had anything to do with his 2022-90 arrest. I am the last one." Brax's voice could seem monotone to some, but having spent a lot of time around battle androids, Watson had learned to discern the subtle tones in the voice that betrayed sentiment. "It's okay to be scared," Watson told him, taking a long drink from his coffee. Brax had been part of the legendary arrest of Polar in 2290, costing him his livelihood. In the arrest, Brax had nearly lost his left arm, and his nerve functions had been completely burned out. It was only because he was a hero that he was brought back online, with only a repaired nervous system, though. The arm had never been fixed. What he had left was the beaten remains of an arm that once was laden with armor and weaponry. Still capable of punching a man's head off, but in no way effective against another battle android. It had to be funny to look at him when Watson had first arrived on Ranon. On getting to know Brax, though, Watson had changed his view. Watson himself was lopsided by the massive battle arm he had on his left, but the rest of his body looked like any human being. If anything, the bulk of the arm only made to unsettle people. Brax was a huge battle android, and to have his left arm so withered in comparison to the rest of him made him seem weak. It did not help that Brax did little to stand up for himself. He had taken to wearing a camouflage coat over his armored body, with the right sleeve torn off to reveal his good arm, while the other sleeve hid the damaged one. This proved to be a strange scene, because battle androids didn't wear clothes. They bore their armor for all to see. Not to mention that it must have been some task for Brax to find clothing in his size. Brax was an entity ashamed of its body. "He is going to level this city and tear me apart," Brax said. "No, I'm sure Caleb and Joshua will figure a way to stop him. Come on, Brax, have a little hope." Brax stood up, his huge red eyes glaring down on Watson. "There is no God for androids. You know that." He hugged his withered arm across his body in his usual fashion and turned around to reach for something on the work desk. When Brax turned back around, he was holding a small red orb in his massive scaled plasteel hand like a treasure. "Do you know what this is?" he said to Watson. "No." "It's a war cell," Brax told him. "Really?" Watson said curiously, looking from the small red orb to Brax's face. "I bought this with my savings before they transferred me here, in case I ever found myself in trouble again." Androids were similar to human beings in that their biology followed many of the same parameters. It was just made up of stronger materials, not to mention the fact that android biology could be manipulated easier. At the center of every android was the power cell, which was basically a battery that pumped the biomechanical systems of their body. Certain androids designed for situations of great duress were made with a kind of battery called a war cell. Essentially, what it boiled down to was the war cell provided far greater amounts of power, thought to sharpen all the systems of the body and give an android an edge in combat. Watson looked at Brax's gem with great admiration. "It will give you a boost versus Polar, but I think you might need something more," Watson said. "Not for me. For you, Watson." "Are you kidding me?" Watson put down his coffee mug. "I cannot fight him. I am afraid of him." Brax's red eyes turned down to look at the withered arm pulled tight across his stomach region. "Think about this, Brax. I'll take it if you want. But think about this first, please." Taking a war cell was no sudden decision. Brax sat back down, holding the war cell in his left hand, the only part of his left arm that was still in perfect working order. "You think I am a coward, do you not?" "Come on, Brax, this is me. If you're a coward, then so am I. I just follow orders better," Watson said. Brax made a noise like metal vibrating, shot through with clicks. A battle android laugh. Watson picked his coffee back up and took a long drink, marveling at the terrible taste his sensors reported back. "Don't worry, Brax. I'm sure everything is going to be just fine," he told his friend. Caleb marched up the steps of the Quadrant 12 City Police Station feeling ill. He never wanted to go back to his apartment, and he had a monumental problem on his hands. Polar. The beaten steel doors were heavier than usual as he pushed past them into the front room of the station. There was a large desk at the head of the bare gray room, where a young lady with chin-length blonde hair sat reading a pink media reader, her bare feet pulled up on the desk before her. Christine Sommer was the youngest member of the force here at just over 23, though at times she was still a teenager. She had been trained in call and sent out here to gain some experience before being sent off-world. HQ felt she had promise, though Caleb had not seen much of it. "Hey, Chris, where's Joshua?" Caleb called, snapping her from her media reader with a start. She looked up at him and smiled, her almond-shaped blue eyes narrowing on him. Chris was wearing a similar blue police shirt to Caleb, with the badge clipped on, and a utility belt cinched around her tiny waist. "Will and him are in Bear's office waiting for you. Are we really going to war with Polar?" She seemed giddy over the whole affair, but Caleb ignored it. "No. HQ is sending in a specialist." This did not seem to interest her. "Oh, well, you better talk to Brax, though. I heard he was pissing himself in the basement. Poor thing." Her smile cut off, and she went back to her reader. He watched her for a few moments, then shook his head at her, and went around to the left of the desk, to the doors that led into the rest of the station. Bayer's office was located on the 4th floor, a corner office with large windows. Of course, it was only a view of the city, but at least it didn't feel as closed in as every other room in the station. Caleb marched past the main room, where all the officer cubicles were, to the main stairwell, and started hopping up the stairs 2 by 2. They had an elevator, but it had been broken for 6 months now, and no one seemed in the mood to even try and fix it. Not that any of them knew how. Brax had been trying to locate the repair specs, but the city hadn't connected to the planet's internal mainframe yet. The 4th floor was where the station's mainframe resided, sharing the space with a shabby training room and offices. Caleb stepped through the door of Bayer's office to see Joshua and Will standing by the window, looking very at ease. Joshua Cale and William Porter were the resident detectives of the station, and dealt with all the more involved cases. Not many of those came around, but when they came, the two men did a good job. William Porter was the senior officer in Quadrant 12, and might have been head if he had ever chosen to accept the promotion. He had always remained contently where he was, though. At 50, Will could have retired by now. His contract was long since up, but he acted like a man in his prime, and everyone knew that he would die on the job, if he ever died. Joshua, by contrast, was still in his 30s and had been transferred to Ranon after several charges of excessive violence on Tierra Major. He was the only man on the force who had ever seen the home world, and now he was a detective on the farthest planet from it. This did not aid his disposition. The two made a good team, and did not wear uniforms of any manner. Will had on a pair of cargo khakis and a black shirt buttoned up to the neck, while Joshua was dressed in all varying shades of brown, with a light tan vest and a black knit cap. Caleb wasn't even sure if they carried their badges anymore. On a planet like Ranon, though, who was really checking the details? If you had a gun and people knew you would use it, they listened. "We got a message from Bayer," Joshua said, smiling as he stroked his mustache with 2 fingers. "Oh yeah, what's that?" Caleb said, and sat down on the office couch. "He's retiring," Joshua announced, barely keeping back a chuckle. "You gotta be fucking kidding me," Caleb said, standing back up. "Nope. He heard about Polar and just decided he was going to stay on his fishing trip, which means he stays off-world, and you are no longer the acting officer in charge." Joshua looked smug delivering the information, and it made Caleb want to punt him out the window. "Great," Caleb said, and let himself fall back down on the couch. "Don't be so dramatic," Will told him. "It's not like you have to do much. You get paid more, and all you have to do is sit around and do paperwork. As far as Polar goes, Call is sending a specialist over, so we should be fine." The man chuckled then as well, and ran his hands back through his graying brown hair. He stopped his hands behind his head for a moment in the famous William thinking pose. "But wouldn't be too bad making some preparations in case that specialist ain't all he's cracked up to be," Will said. The hands came down from the head to his sides. "Prep Max and Watson, I guess." Caleb meant it as a question, but the two men understood it as an order. "What about Brax?" Joshua asked. "That monster is coming here for him. Shouldn't he be part of this?" "Joshua, Brax is not going to be part of this, even if I order him to," Caleb said. "Maybe I should talk to him," Will said. "And besides, the specialist will probably take care of all of this." Caleb rubbed his eyes and leaned back into the couch. "Dane and Nastus were asking if we were going to issue any heavy weaponry," Joshua said, and sat down at the corner of what was now Caleb's desk. "Do we even have any?" From what Caleb knew, there were not many effective weapons against Polar, least of which they had. "There's a bazooka in the basement somewhere. Might not be a bad thing if they got it," Will cut in, his eyes directed toward the window. "That's all we need, those trigger-happy fucks with a bazooka." Might as well." Caleb yawned and took a deep breath. "Are there any other battle androids on Ranon, Will?" "None that we could get. Everyone's going to be keeping their hardware close in case Polar comes after them." Will furrowed his brow for a moment. "There might be a mech I can get from a friend of mine in Quadrant 56. It's nothing big, but it does have some artillery on it that could put a dent in Polar. If I left tonight, I could be back by the time he got here." Caleb considered this and tried to weigh it out the chances that they would need a contingency plan. If only Bear wasn't such a coward, he wouldn't be stuck making this decision. Yeah, see if you can get it, but talk to Brax before you go. I'll find that bazooka too while I'm down there, Will said. Good, Caleb said. Then I will be on my way, boys. Will headed for the door, then paused. I'll see you before I go, Caleb. Caleb acknowledged this, and Will continued on, leaving the two men alone in the office. Wouldn't it be funny if we were all dead by the time he got back? Joshua said, and started to laugh. That's not funny, Caleb spoke sternly. Sure it is. He gets back like the cavalry, except we're all dead, and it's just him versus Polar. And he'd probably win, too, knowing his fucking luck. Caleb managed a slight chuckle. Do me a favor. What? Get Watson and Max up here. I'll send them up in a while. You look like shit. Take a nap or something, Joshua advised him. It had been Caleb's day off, and, beyond fighting with his wife, he had been planning to get some sleep. Ever since Janie got back, he hadn't been sleeping well. Do I? Well, it was my day off, before the maniac android decided to make vacation plans for my city. I couldn't sleep last night, though. Janie and me were fighting again. Why won't you just leave again and not come back? It would have made everything so much easier. Why don't you just kick her out and move in with Angel? Caleb gave Joshua an awkward look, then shook his head. Joshua continued, It amazes me how you allow a mess like this to go on. Good to know you're in charge now. Joshua pushed himself off the desk and left the office, chuckling. Caleb got up and slammed the door shut. The Ranon winds were at their busiest this time of year, and it blanketed the city in a layer of red earth. It reminded him of that ancient Clint Eastwood movie where he made the townspeople paint the town red and name it Hell. His old film collection was back at the apartment. Not that watching movies is what he should have been doing right now. It would just have been nice. He sat back down on the couch, still looking out the window, and pulled his guns out. Caleb placed them on the floor before the couch, then lay down across the plastic pillows and closed his eyes, curling up on his side after a few moments. His coat made him feel a little too warm, but despite the discomfort, he didn't want to get up to take the coat off. He just wanted to lie there and forget for a while that he was Caleb West, new chief officer of the Quadrant 12 City Police Department. Look at this waist, Max said, pushing his shades up on his forehead. Chris glared over her pink media reader display and grunted at him, then went back to reading. He let the door close behind him and crossed the room in a few short strides to sit down on the desk and look at her display. I'm not sure if Front Desk Protocol has a chapter on romance novels, Chris. Eat me, Max, she replied, scrolling the display down. Such conduct. Never going to make detective that way, he said. Yeah, well, I have better chance than you, don't I? Or did Galaxy Police start letting androids take that position? Chris said. She had a point, and Max decided to leave before she got nasty. He got off the desk and left the front room. The station was empty as usual, since it wasn't as if they actually had enough officers to fill the place. A city like Quadrant 12 should have had at least 20, and here they were with a mere 10 officers. That is, if you counted Brax, and Max did not. He hopped down the stairs by the threes and kicked the basement door open with a yell. Something fell, and there was a shattering noise, followed by a low metallic hum, a battle android's disgruntled groan. Scared ya? Max said, taking his shades off as the door closed behind him. Brax was standing over a fallen computer monitor, looking more dejected than usual. I would appreciate if you would disperse with these games for the time being, the battle android announced, bending over to pick up the various broken pieces of the thin glass display. Damn, Brax, why so serious? Max said, taking a seat at his desk across from Brax's workstation. You have not heard? The large head shifted up to focus the red insect-like eyes on Max. What? Max said, putting his mirror shades down on the desktop. Polar is on his way here to kill me. Yeah? Max said, with his eyes suddenly wide open. Yes. Brax made that low, groaning noise again. Well, that's great. We're going to get to fight Polar? Yes! Max jumped to his feet and held his hands before him in victory fists. I gotta get ready. When's he going to be here? Day after tomorrow, Brax spoke. He had collected most of the glass shards of the monitor by now and was laying the pieces down on his workbench. After a moment, Brax went back to where the monitor had fallen and got down one knee to search for smaller shards. We have to get up to the training room and practice, Max declared. Brax stopped cleaning and looked at the android. Max, no offense to you, but Polar would throw you through a building. Brax went back to cleaning. Just then, the basement door opened, and Watson, followed by Will, came through. The detective squinted in the dim light of the basement at first, pausing to rub his eyes. You guys keep it dark down here. How do you work? Will asked, approaching the android's makeshift office area. The 3 desks and the workbench were arranged in a semicircle, bordered on all sides from the corridor to the basement door by file servers and broken equipment from the other parts of the building. Night vision, Watson explained, sitting down at his desk beside Brax's workbench. Will seemed to consider the answer, then shrugged it off. I imagine the 3 of you know what I'm doing here to talk to you about. Polar's going to be here day after tomorrow. Our call is sending a specialist, but Caleb and me agreed that we might want to be ready in case that specialist needs help. Will had always taken a grandfatherly role with the younger members of the Force, to none more so than the androids. Even though Brax is older than Will, and Max is only a few years younger, they all treated him like the wise man he was. There was something about mortality that made people think more, drawing greater wisdom from the age. Max was 48 standard years old, but he knew he looked like he was in his late 20s, and had been described as a teenager by some. He had known of the wisdom that Will seemed to have, and had the feeling he would never have it. Perhaps it was his design, or it was just his character. So you're saying I should get my blaster and suit up for combat? Max asked. His face only wrinkled around his mouth when he smiled. What I'm saying is that we should be ready. You should all be ready. And Brax, you might want to prepare yourself, too. Caleb didn't say anything about using you on this, but if the needs should come, I would appreciate you helping. You are the true veteran here, Will said. Brax nodded soundlessly, his left arm pulled tight across his stomach. What are you going to do, Will? Max inquired. I'm headed to Quadrant 56 to borrow a mech from a friend of mine there. We won't need it, I'm sure, but I like to be prepared. When are you getting back? Watson continued the inquiry. Oh, about the same time as Polar, he said. Brax groaned and went to his workbench. I'll be here, though, fast as I can, Will said. Max, find that bazooka you fixed up about a week ago and give it to Dane. Caleb wants him to have the extra firepower. The man stopped speaking then, and silence consumed them all, with Brax at the center. His hulking form looked lax and limp as he sat there at his workbench, with his back to them. Will crossed the small office and rested his hand on Brax's withered left shoulder. He squeezed it once, then turned and left them. Max watched him go, then looked at Brax and turned to Watson. This is going to be awesome, Max said with satisfaction. For you, maybe, was all Watson said, and looked at Brax. Angel powered down the magnets on the patrol hover and waited till the vehicle had settled on the roadside beside the police station before unbuckling herself. She pulled the straps off of her and hoisted her patrol belt across her right shoulder as she slid out the right side of the patrol hover. Her dark blue uniform was almost red from the winds, not to mention her skin. The patrol hover had been white at one time, though, no more. Ranon had stained the metal a permanent red. Angel worried sometimes that she would end up the same way. She hustled up the front stairs of the building and booted the doors open, pitching forward to escape the winds. A young blonde girl observed her from over the gray frame of a diginovel, her feet hoisted up onto the reception desk. Hey, Chrissy, Angel said, leaving a trail of red dust on her approach to the desk. You know, you keep reading those books and real sex will get boring. That would be considering if it wasn't already, she replied and hid her eyes behind the digibook. Angel smiled at the girl and shook some of the dust out of her hair, beginning to head back past the desk for the rest of the station. Caleb's upstairs, Chris said. Angel paused and looked back at Chris. He's up in Bear's office. Angel headed for the woman's locker room, then paused and glanced over at the stairs. Is that a tan, or are you just covered in shit? Dane said. He had a big grin on his face when she looked over at him, which might have had something to do with the large bazooka strapped across his back. Fuck you, Dane. I'm tired, she replied. Wise men say, never mouth off to a man with a bazooka, Dane warned her. Yeah, from where I'm standing, he's just begging for it. What do you think? Dane said, pulling the weapon off his back to hold it before her. The body of the weapon was a meter-long cylinder with 2 pistol grips extending from it, about a half a meter apart near the firing end. It looked to be in good enough condition, but then nothing on Ranon could be trusted fully. Maybe you'll get off one good shot before it blows up in your face. She curved her lips at him. Bitch, I think she'll be just fine. I didn't realize your patrols had gotten so dangerous, Dane. You just going to blow the jaywalkers away now? He looked from the bazooka to her with the face of a suddenly illuminated light bulb. I wish. No, I'm dropping this baby off at my place now when I head out for patrol, saving her for Polar. If you ever get the chance, Angel said. Soon enough. What, you haven't heard? What? Polar is coming here day after tomorrow to bury the lot of us, Dane said as though it was a present, growing more excited as he went. Angel looked over at the stairs again, thinking of Caleb. Caleb issued me this baby. Dane gave the bazooka a loving glance. In case the specialist from HQ ain't no so special. Angel nodded. Anyway, gotta get on my way. Caleb's upstairs. I know, she stated. Just saying. Dane shouldered his prized weapon again as he strolled off to take on his shift of the patrol. She waited till he had gone, then started to move for the stairs, and stopped, turned, and headed past the cubicles for the officers' lounge. Right now, a shower was really what she wanted, but she also wanted to know what was really going on before she tried to relax. The red dust shook off from her boots as she marched down the long, windowless hallway beyond the cubicles to the last door on the left. Nastus was snoring lightly when she came through the door. Joshua acknowledged her with a nod and continued drinking from a chipped black mug. She sat down adjacent to Joshua at the shabby imitation wood table and placed her patrol belt down on it to get the weight off her shoulder. Angel didn't talk at first. She just looked at Joshua and waited for him to notice her looking intently at him. What? He said, putting his mug down. When did you get the news about Polar? About 2 hours after you headed out. Why? I don't know. Seems like something that would have been radioed out to me. Why? You're here now. And while we're catching up, Bayer retired. Joshua smiled for effect. Oh, that fat bastard. That's why Caleb's here, isn't it? Well, that is part of it, yes. Joshua took another drink from his mug. Calm down, Angel, Nassus advised from the torn gray couch at the side of the room. Consider it a godsend that Bayer left us with Caleb. He doesn't need the stress, Nastus, she objected. Well, he can retire then, Nastus replied, shifting about to sit up. We can all retire and let Polar mow this place down. Heads would roll, Joshua added. Not ours, Nastus said. But I'd much rather have Caleb leading us to the chopping block than Bayer any day. And to be honest, I'm a little excited about all this. He looked from Angel to Joshua as he spoke. Kind of that calm before you die, huh? Joshua said, chuckling. Great. Angel grabbed her patrol belt and got up to leave in annoyance. What's wrong with you? Joshua called at her. She turned quickly, creating a momentary cloud of red dust about her, and glared at Joshua. Polar is coming here, and so far everyone I've seen is acting like there's no problem. But I bet when I get upstairs, Caleb is going to be freaking out. She wanted to go and see him. Angel, HQ is sending someone to take care of this, which means they're going to take care of this, Nastus said, shedding his teasing tone for a few moments. Caleb got a raise, and we get a good show, so relax. His dark brown eyes fixed in her eyes, and she nodded. not ready with a reply. Perhaps he was right. "Sorry," she said. "Never a problem. Go, get out of that uniform and clean up. Caleb's upstairs." Nassis's voice went from serious to sensitive, and it almost made her want to laugh. This bald black man standing at just under 2 meters, wearing a green assault jumpsuit and a black police coat, was trying to play the warm and caring type when she knew him too well for that. Nassus was a crazy bastard, and sensitivity was not one of his faculties. Joshua laughed lowly and put his mug down. Angel waited for a moment, then left the lounge, shaking her head. Men always felt as if they had to quell women and be sensitive for them. It made Angel want to kick them in the jewels and show them what was really sensitive. That sensitivity didn't seem to extend to those situations that demanded it, though. No secret that everyone here was a reject of some sort or another, but that didn't mean they had to act the cool and crazy part all the time. Polar was coming, and whether they had a specialist or not, it was a volatile situation. She trotted up the stairs all the way to the 4th floor, leaving a fading trail of red in her wake. The 4th floor was silent, but for the whistle of the wind outside. She peeked through the window on the door before entering Bayer's office, spotting Caleb on the couch. He didn't wake when she opened the door and shut it behind her, squatting down beside the couch. Caleb lay half on the couch and half off, his hand dangling between his 2 pistols, neatly placed on the floor side by side. Angel shook her head at him and put the 2 pistols on the desk, listening to his slow, long breaths as she did. He had a strange way of breathing, so different from hers. His breaths were long on the draw and then paused, before soundlessly releasing the air. When they slept together, she could barely hear him breathing. Caleb stirred, his mouth moving as if he were talking, but no sound came. She gently touched his face and rubbed his cheek with her stained thumb, leaving a red smudge. "Caleb," she whispered to herself. His usually combed-back brown hair was ruffled and unkempt, sticking up in places. Dark circles ringed his closed eyes, denoting the amount of sleep he had not gotten last night. No doubt the fault of his wife. Angel sighed. She let her hand trail down from his face, down along his wrinkled uniform shirt, to the checkered sash around his waist that made her smile. Angel had given him the sash when they had first started being intimate, after he had shared his darkest secret with her, his love of old westerns from Earth. Terrible movies by Angel's standards, but she endured them for him, to see his face as he enjoyed them. In one of the movies, a cowboy had worn a sash around his waist and held his guns there, which Caleb had thought looked very cool. It had taken Angel a while, but she had hunted down a material similar to the sash the movie cowboy had, and made one for Caleb. Her fingers lingered on the sash, and then she sat down on the floor, pulling her legs up before her, and locked her hands around her knees. Caleb was going to be crazy with all this. She knew that. Unlike the others, he was sensitive for real, and it left him confused and worn out, vulnerable. How a man like that was a cop still stumped her. But here he was sleeping before her, the new boss man. His wife would probably be enchanted that he'd be making a greater salary now, so that she could go out and spend it. Maybe she would save up and then leave again. It was too much to hope for in reality. She had left once and had come groveling back after a year. She would not leave again. Angel just didn't know what to do at this point. It had been close to a month since her return, and Caleb had done nothing to leave his wife. Could it be possible that he wanted to be with her and not Angel? She sat there glumly and closed her eyes, letting her head fall forward. His wife hated Ranon, but she had come out here with him because, at one time, she must have loved him. At one time Angel knew he had loved her too, but she had thought that time was over. Angel had thought it was now her time. "Time's running out, Caleb," she said, lifting her head to look at his sleeping face. Quietly, she climbed to her feet and left the office. Her shift was over, and she could go home for a shower. She didn't need to stay here any longer. If he wanted to find her, he knew where she was.